All right, thanks, Matt. Yeah, here we are. Zoe Riederman, CJ Voege, and Living End versus Temur Rhinos, two Cascade decks. Well, that certainly could be kind of messy. CJ taking a mulligan here.
Yeah, I mean, it could have been a lot messier. We had planned to feature Zoe earlier until we realized the match in question was going to be a Living End mirror, which is not something I would wish on my worst enemy. And so we kind of tabled that one for the time being. Back in now with not really a mirror per se, but a battle of the Cascade decks. Both of those 3-0 at the moment. We'll see which one can take it down here.
Yeah, and this is something that I feel like is we have the same engine powering two very different decks, which I think is cool.
Yeah, I mean, we even have a third Cascade deck in this tournament. One of our leaderboard contenders playing Glimpse of Tomorrow Cascade, which is one of my personal favorites in the format too. So this Cascade pseudo mirror, I think game one consensus is pretty heavily favored for Living End. You have the disruption, you have kind of more consistent ways of doing your thing, and then also that thing just resets any board full of rhinos, overpowers what they're doing. Post Sideboard gets a little tricky, and it's safe to say, looking at these lists, CJ came very well prepared for this matchup.
All right. Well, we'll get to that. Between games, we'll start off here with a Grief from Zoe Riederman, revealing, looks like, a couple lands, a couple Shardless Agents, and a Force of Negation. And Force is the pick, unsurprisingly there. So Zoe knows what she's up against. Yeah, Matt was saying, yeah, Zoe Riederman in the past, always a burn player, always a min-cash player. Never really broke through top 16s, no top 8s. Never really, completely blanked on the weekend either. It's just always min-cash. And switched up decks, and whether burn is just weaker than Living End or this deck just spoke to Zoe or she rededicated herself, whatever the cause, her results dramatically improved. And this year, looking in a good spot to be joining us for the championship, but not locked up yet, as a Striped Riverwinder is cycled here and replaced by another copy.
Yeah, I think it's really nice in a format like Modern where, decks do stick around for a long time to kind of get that sense of mastery with the deck and, to find a choice you're really comfortable with. And, I mean, if that is burn, fair enough. It seemed like Zoe had higher ambitions than that, but wasn't sure where she wanted to go. Settled on Living End, really has achieved a level of mastery with that deck over the months and years, and that's paying off for her now.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we'll see if CJ Voege is up to the challenge here. Obviously, had no difficulty in the first few rounds today, advancing at 3-0. And we're definitely into the midpoint of the tournament here, where, I mean, 8 rounds of Swiss, so you're through the early stages. You're probably playing mostly against tier decks at this point, kind of avoiding the random fringe riffraff that can sometimes show up in events. More likely to see that, round 1 or 2 or the 1-2 table than you are at 3-0.
Yeah, Living End used to be this mainstay of the Modern format. Has fallen off pretty hard in recent months. It's only the diehards like Zoe that you see playing it these days. But certainly on this circuit, you have Zoe, you have a few others who are known for being proficient with this archetype, and so you still have to respect it more than you would have just the average online tournament, let's say.
Mm-hmm. All right, so here is a Shardless Agent into a couple of Rhinos. So he manages to avoid drawing another Living End, which at that point would have been crippling. I don't know if we're playing 3 or 4 copies of Living End in the list today. We can take a look at that.
Yeah, it looks like 3 in the main deck and then the 4th in the sideboard. Pretty common there. There are some matchups where you expect that you're going to need to cascade twice and then fight over a few different Living Ends, and at that point you want to make sure you're not drawing all of them. That is one of the things that can happen, especially with the Living End deck. Is you've drawn 2 of them already, and then you want to keep cycling to build your graveyard and find the cascade spell. But then if you draw that 3rd Living End, then it's just kind of lights out on the spot here. But luckily, Zoe has at least 1 Living End left over. Is going to get to cascade into it here, and we're going to see why, at least in game 1, this matchup is so tough for Rhinos. 10 power on CJ's side, that is going to disappear. Zoe is going to have more than that, plus a grief trigger to work with as well. And unless you have a timely Force of Negation, which CJ did until it was griefed out of his hand, then there's really no other line of defense there.
All right, so CJ looks through what's going to the bottom there, whatever information might be gleaned from that, knows that Shardless Agent is going to be getting tagged by the grief and being left with just 2 lands in hand, which is not a lot. I don't think Zoe's got a 1-turn clock here, probably 2, as this looks like 5, 9, 12 damage maybe on the board, but a lot to deal with, as there's no easy way to deal with this from CJ's deck.
Yeah, this is one issue the Rhino set can run into, is you have stuff like Fury, you have good interaction, but once you fall behind to this degree, there really is no good way to catch back up. And even this top deck Shardless Agent into yet another set of Rhinos, it kind of pales into comparison to what Zoe has going on.
It's still pretty good, though. This will limit the attacks and certainly slow the clock down quite a bit. And Zoe well, CJ doesn't know this, but we know there's no more living ends in the deck. Although the Colossal Skyturtle in hand will be able to disrupt a double block on the Riverwinder, or if that is something that's in the future.
Yeah, these are the creatures we have to get the job done. The question is, can we cross the finish line? One thing we might see, though, is just hard cast Curator of Mysteries to add another 4/4 flyer to the board. And these the board states you end up with in living it sometimes is, all right, well, I've either cascaded once or I can't cascade anymore. Time to just cast some, 4/4 flyers before and get to work.
Sure. Yeah, that will certainly work. CJ with even more to deal with now. This deck not great at picking off flyers anyway. You're used to dominating on the ground, which isn't even something that's really happening right now. And certainly a deficit in the air. And lining up an attack here just to push some damage through? That seems pretty speculative.
I mean, knowing that there's 8 power worth of flyers on the other side, you don't have much time to close out the game. So you have to, I guess, try and stitch something together. Maybe if CJ just drew Violent Outburst, that could complicate things a fair amount.
And that can certainly influence Zoe's choices of blocking here. A Violent Outburst would mean the Striped Riverwinder would die if it blocked. And yet, I guess, Zoe's going to line it up anyway. CJ doesn't have it.
Yeah, one of these smaller burn spells, like a Fire Ice or something, could maybe finish off the Curator that's blocking the Shardless Agent. But yeah, other than that, I think this is this kind of Hail Mary attempt here. And yeah, channel Otawara, bouncing Curator after it's already blocked. I think CJ sees the running on the wall here.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a play that wasn't super likely to work. The attack was, will Zoe over-respect Violent Outburst? She doesn't. She blocks appropriately, and she just play ends up looking a little silly. But you're right. This was basically just a Hail Mary shot. I'm pretty screwed anyway. I'll try and do something. And in return, 7 damage comes across.
And I think we're going to go to a game 2 right here between Zoe and CJ. And based on that game, you would think correctly, this seems like an awful matchup for Rhinos. Rhinos does have some room to regain some of that in sideboarding. And not to offer a preview of what we might see here, but looking at this list, we have 3 Endurance and 4 Laydown in the Void in CJ sideboard. And even 4 copies of Mystical Dispute, which you can board into to win fights over an Endurance when it comes down to that. So a lot of dead cards in a bad matchup game 1. Really get to flip that matchup around post-sideboard, though.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and take a look then, see what else there is to bring to bear. But I imagine that's the bulk of it, and that does seem like a lot. Now, is that more than Zoe would expect to see out of CJ sideboard?
I think it is. Usually you see at most 1 of Endurance and Leyline, and it's tough to know which one you want to respect, right? So usually in Living in sideboards, and this is true of Zoe's, you see Foundation Breaker, Force of Vigor, Boseiju, effects like this, and those are good against Leyline, but you don't really want to draw Force of Vigor against the rest of CJ's deck, I guess Blood Moon aside. And so it's tough to know, again, for a closed decklist tournament, do you respect the threat of Leyline? Do you board these cards in the dark? Do you just hedge more generally against stuff like Endurance, and then maybe reassess for game 3 once you see the ley line? It's tough to say.
Right. All right. Let's just swing over to Zoe's list and see the tools that you're referring to there. Yeah. I mean, potential cards to bring in. We're looking at Boseiju, Force of Vigor, Mystical Dispute, maybe the Last Living End, Foundation Breakers, Endurance. Yeah, that's a lot. And obviously, all of that isn't coming in. So, or probably all of it's not coming in. I shouldn't speak for Zoe on how the sideboarding works. I'm sure she's got it down pat. But choices have to be made here. What cards do you target? And whatever she excludes, she's going to end up being wrong since CJ has everything.
Yeah, I would expect maybe the Foundation Breakers to come in anyway, because against Temur Rhinos specifically, Blood Moon is a threat, especially on the draw, so you want to hedge against that a little bit. And Boseiju is really nice for letting you do that too, because at its best, it blows up the ley line that might otherwise win the game by itself. At worst, it's a land that helps you get to 3 mana to cast your Cascade spell. So fine deal either way there. Stuff like Force of Vigor, a little bit more speculative. If you know there's going to be 4 ley lines where you grit your teeth and you bring those in and you hope for the best. For game 2, I'm not sure how far Zoe will go in that direction.
Right. She did see, I believe, 2 Blood Moons in game 1 on Cascade, and there are 3, although that's not necessarily something she would assume. But there are targets for it if it does come in. And Boseiju seems like a winner. I love the Channel Land cycle. It's so good. All of them.
It adds this wrinkle to these games where your opponent's partially green deck, they're probably going to have the one supposedly free copy of Boseiju, and the threat of that can really warp how entire games play out. Just the threat of this one-of can change everything. I think there's been pretty nice balanced additions to most constructed formats, and then Modern in particular is where you see, I think, the most room to lean hard on those if you want to. So you see, Amulet Titan, for example, might have 3 to 4 copies of Boseiju in a 75.
Right.
Other decks, I'm green, so I'll just slot the one in there and call it a day. You can really adjust how far you want to go there.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, players getting ready for game number 2. But you have to be careful, especially when you're loading up on them. There is a limit to how many you can comfortably play. I actually was gifted a game a couple months ago in our CQ when my Amulet opponent played a second Boseiju without realizing it.
Yeah.
And then I was like, that's a legendary rule. And the opponent was like, uh-oh. And then they kind of threw in the graveyard, they recalculated, they're like, yeah, I can't win the game anymore. And that's
we're both long in the tooth. We both remember the days where like Kamigawa standard or block constructed, where these legendary lands, like you would play your Manamo and then they would strip mine your Manamo with their Manamo, and then it got very messy sometimes.
No, the rules are definitely better now, but
yes.
The token legendary land that fits into the deck, it's not a new thing, but these ones are certainly have an outsized impact on the game compared to previous cycles. All right. Opening up game number 2 here. Do we like our hands? Opening requirements in Cascade decks are fairly light compared to other decks. Is that right? Would I be right in saying that?
I think it depends on the Cascade deck. The thing about Living End is because so many of your cards cycle and replace themselves, you can keep a hand that's an interactive card, 2 lands, and 4 cyclers, and that's a pretty strong hand. In Rhinos, if you're missing that Cascade spell, you can't really rely on drawing it in the same way. And so unless a hand has other things going for it, and the merit of Rhinos is you get to play more interaction, then you'll consider mulliganing, or if you have one of your specific sideboard cards, like your 4 ley lines, your 3 endurances, then you can keep a hand based on those as well.
Yeah. All right, so looking at 6 here now for CJ. Yeah. Leyline of the Void, an excellent card to find in your opening hand if it's going to be found anywhere, because it's not getting cast.
One interesting wrinkle about these Cascade decks too is you mentioned we saw Blood Moon in game 1. Blood Moon was never put on the stack, but we just flipped past it in search of our Crashing Footfalls while we were cascading. And so that is something that can spill this information sometimes. If CJ cascades past a leyline in the Void, well, Zoe knows to respect that if we go to a game 3, even if it wasn't a factor in this game.
What would be something else? So I know that I don't think it's common, but there have been living index that had an Urborg in it to be able to cast Grief later on.
Yes.
If Urborg came down and allowed CJ to hardcast a Leyline, that would be an amusing turn of events.
Yeah, seeing people get screwed over by their own Urborg is always a treat. Don't think we're going to see that this time around.
No.
Zoe's mana base not going in that route, but always one on the coverage bucket list.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so here is a Ketria Triome and a familiar artwork that is easily recognizable. Appreciate that, CJ. There's Otawara. And what do we have action-wise? We have a Shardless Agent. Well, that's a good place to be. And away we go.
So yeah, there's Crashing Footfalls and no sign of Leyline or anything just yet. So that game is still afoot.
So he cycles into Street Wraith, I believe. So we're going to cycle Curator.
On the hunt for Force of Negation here, potentially.
Mm-hmm.
The merit of Living End is it can reset or clean up Rhinos while developing your wall at the same time. But Zoe might not be in a position to do that just yet, and so might feel obliged to spend a Force of Negation if she can find one.
Mm-hmm. Instead, looks like Zoe's got multiple Cascade cards in hand. Here's a Street Wraith. Needing a third land. I think she may have already had it, but she draws one off the top anyway. And, well, this is going to be exactly what CJ doesn't want to have happen, which is losing his board and Zoe creating one simultaneously for the cost of one spell.
Yeah, the worry from this position is going to be Force Negation if you have to do it on your turn, or Endurance at any point if CJ has that, where he loses his Rhinos and so on, but gets to keep the 3-4 round and eat Zoe's graveyard in the process. So yeah, it looks like this is going to be an upkeep. This upkeep Cascade via Violent Outburst, which still is actually vulnerable to Force Negation just being hardcast, but or Endurance. But if that's the case, if it's Endurance, then at least the Endurance can't attack this turn, and you get a little bit more breathing room.
All right. Here's the Outburst. Then also, if it's not Endurance, if it is a Force, then Zoe can untap and then cast another Cascade spell if her graveyard still existed.
Yeah, and you see Subtlety coming in, I think, explicitly out of respect for Endurance, really doing nothing else for you, but that card is so important that you want to nod towards that in some way. Right, so yeah, there's hardcast Force Negation, which if Zoe has... Okay, Zoe doesn't have the force to fight on CJ's turn.
Okay, but this is... well, I guess it's not really a blank turn for CJ. He's still going to attack for 10 damage. But now... out of mana, and Zoe can tap and go with the Shardless if that is in fact in her hand.
Yeah, there it is.
And if this one works, then the 10 damage that just went by the wayside is not going to matter too much. Skating away, finds Living End. And there's Endurance. CJ was ready to hardcast the Force, pitchcast the Endurance.
And yeah, here's Subtlety to fight back over that.
All right. Lots of stuff on the stack. Who needs mana? We got free spells.
Yeah, the free spell cycle, a massive boon to Living End, where it can play Force Negation and then Force of Vigor out of the sideboard, and can play any mix of Grief, Subtlety, Endurance. You even see lists that are heavy on red for Fury. But both of those free spell cycles were a massive boon to this deck.
Yeah. So this is tough. I mean, I feel for CJ here. He had the tools. He had the Force. He had the Endurance. And it looks as if he is still going to get absolutely shredded, as this Subtlety will go to the graveyard, and then it will come into play as well, unless CJ's got something else.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of why you can see
Mhm.
Rhinos players feel they need drastic steps on the order of
Yeah.
Leyline of the Void to really compete in this matchup, because it's so, I mean, this is so demoralizing otherwise.
Yeah, this is brutal. And Zoe now probably does have a one-turn kill here if CJ can't muster quite a bit of defense. And cascading for a new set of Rhinos will buy him a turn, but it's not going to be enough to turn the whole game around, I don't think.
Yeah, those Rhinos have to jump in front of the the oncoming train, I think.
There go the Blood Moons. There's a ley line, so Zoe gets to see that that's actually there. And yeah, so I mean, CJ does what he could hope for this turn. But the 10 power, which looked fearsome a couple turns ago, this is the same 10 power as he had before, with a pair of 4/4s and a 2/2, but Zoe's board is powerful and
Yeah,
not going to shy away from just a measly 10 power worth of stuff.
yeah, and there was that Foundation Breaker as well, just kind of hedging against Leyline over here, and then Subtlety hedging against Endurance over there.
All right, attack looks like it's going to be for 12, but double block is likely incoming.
Though I think Zoe still has Colossal Skyturtle, if I saw it right. So that can mess up any kind of threatened double block.
Yeah. Then would that suggest then that CJ likely ought to triple block here?
I guess so.
Okay, instead it's going to chop block. Okay, that's reasonable also.
Yeah, so this might be the same position from last game of, is there any chance I can sneak through? And maybe it involves, all right, well, I draw Violent Outburst, and then I get to attack here, and then, you know, force some damage through, trade off with Riverwinder, and make more Rhinos for next turn, but...
Yeah, so he's not taking any chances here. Blocks to
so
absorb
he
all the
snaps off those
trample.
blocks.
Right. Yeah, she had thought that through beforehand, knew what she wanted to do. And CJ Voege this time does have the Violent Outburst.
So that's not nothing, but
Right.
I don't think it's enough.
But it is going to allow him another turn, as well as picking off the Riverwinder. But Skyturtle has something to say about that. You were right about that. And that means, well, there's new Rhinos, but the attacking one that was going to take down the Riverwinder is bounced into the air to discorporate. And on top of being behind on the board, another problem is that if CJ does catch up on the board, if Zoe cascades again, he'll be right back where he was in the first place.
Yeah, this really feels like just struggling to push the rock up the hill at this point. It's just, it feels hopeless.
And
so he doing some quick maths and realizing, yeah, I can just turn basically everything sideways here.
Yeah, here comes the team. And if both of those runners are forced to chump block, this game is all but over. Yeah, 9 damage comes through. CJ Voege down to 3. So he's going to Shardless again. And I would think, or we're just playing this to have a 2/2?
Looks like it, yeah. Get to spend a little more time on camera.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. Yeah, and so he passes on the Living End. So this is just to add an extra 2/2 onto the board. She doesn't feel the need to have that Cascader in hand, which may imply that there are extras, or that she just realizes that CJ doesn't have much chance of beating this. Anyway, it's like, well, okay, CJ has can at least tap the Shardless. Okay. Yeah, we are definitely done here.
Yeah, that was a fast one. I don't know where we plan to head next, but yeah, Zoe swiftly jumping to 4-0. She was another person who I think was feeling pretty safe about her spot in the championship, but wanted to really cement that. And 4-0 start, I think, has to be feeling pretty happy and pretty secure at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. So she locks that one down. Now we've got maybe we'll hit over to a backup match. I don't know if we have a match on replay or if that was fast enough that we can jump into a match live. We'll find out. But anyway, we're going to see a backup match.
We do have Merfolk on the backup table, and if Twitter and coverage have taught me anything, it's people love Merfolk. So we will see if we can get the masses what they want here.
All right. Well, if it's a replay, let's roll it. If we're jumping in live, let's go. Either way, the Merfolk await Connor Mullally with Zorius Hammer versus Nicholas Salyer with Merfolk. And yeah, I played against Merfolk a couple times last week with Tron and lost both times. They definitely have their, they like their islands and they like to gift you islands as well. And that makes some decks less functional. With Hammer, I guess you could turn Urza Saga to an island. That's the way to get rid of it. So there is interaction there as well.
Yeah, Merfolk, one of those decks which in years past was the butt of the joke a lot of the time, I think. It would have some finishes here and there, but never really broke through. Like you, I've played against Merfolk a decent amount in the past few months, and I think it's actually a legitimately impressive deck now. Like, this matchup is, I think, meant to be tough, but I don't know. I think if someone told me, yeah, I'm going to play Merfolk in my next tournament, I wouldn't try and talk them out of it.
Sure. Yeah, that's maybe a rarity over the last. Merfolk was a playable deck maybe 2014 to 16 or so in Modern, and then fell off significantly.
Yeah, it just, one issue, right, is they just don't print that many new Merfolk unless it's a set that really explicitly leans into that. And so all these other decks, all these other new toys, and Merfolk was just there doing the same old Merfolk things. But the various trips to Dominaria over the years have been pretty kind to it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we see Connor Mullally here, who is our current leader, the pole position for the MVP, heading into this last New Rage event of the year at 2-1. And we as we saw from Matt's update at the beginning of the round, all three of the prime contenders for that spot are 2-1 at this point in the day. So we'll see how this plays out.
And a little interesting to see Connor playing Hammer, actually. I know he was experimenting with the Breach deck and said it was one of the hardest decks he tried. Maybe deciding too hard, didn't have enough reps in just yet. But Hammer is very popular, very successful deck. He's close with Raul Kruger, who is one of the best Hammer minds out there. So this choice isn't too surprising given that.
All right, so we see Spreading Seas followed up by to take out Urza Saga. One of the newer Merfolk is it Vodalian Harbinger? Is that the right name?
I wouldn't say Hexcatcher.
I think you're right. I think it is Hexcatcher. Yeah, maybe we can pop that up. Vodalian Hexcatcher. Anyway, it's a it's 1/1 Merfolk Lord that all your Merfolk can sacrifice to Force Spike non-creatures. I believe it's not limited to instant sorceries.
There we go. Out there catching some hands, catching some hexes, and Merfolk is a deck with a glut of good 2-drops already, so it's hard to find room for another one, but this one is good enough to make the cut, even with that in mind.
Yeah, and it's nice that several of them are double blue. This one is only single blue in the colorless, so easier to cast off of Mutavault than a number of the other ones. But still facing the kind of the obvious problems that Hammer creatures, once they get equipped, are just way stronger than anything the Merfolk deck can muster.
Yeah, your 2/2s and 3/3s look pretty unimpressive against 10/12 Ornithopter or whatever's in store here.
Yeah, and Merfolk deck's not really high on removal either. So
yeah, it tends to be just you see some copies of Dismember or something here and there, but even that is conditional on power and toughness in a way that can be trumped pretty easily.
So here we see 2 sacrifices with the Hexcatcher to keep Sigarda's Aid off the board, but at the cost of everything Nicholas has. So there is need for a rapid rebuild here. Let's see what he's got.
So that is, I think, Svellian. This is the MH2. It's not a lord, so to speak, but it's just a good merfolk that
more like a king,
looks at other merfolk.
Right?
Yeah.
He's very powerful. Indestructible if you have 2 other merfolk, and I believe attack and draw a card. So lots of good stuff there. But even this merfolk leader, whatever position Svelin holds, it's not going to hold off this whole army from the hammer deck. As Calder Complete joins Connor's hand and just looking to build towards kind of an inevitable finish here.
Yeah, Merfolk definitely swimming against its tide in this game, and taking a glance at the sideboard quickly, not sure it's going to get that much better for Nicholas in the next game.
That's tough. He does have a foil hat, though. So, that's
does have a very nice hat.
Yeah. But no foils in play, just big potential power as we see Connor playing with his hand revealed from the Stoneforge Mystics, the Calder Complete and the Colossus Hammer.
Yeah, I know back in the SUG days, there were lots of people who wore very colorful, lurid hats and became known for those. So maybe a spot in the market has opened up for someone to do that here. I don't know.
All right, here's a Lord for Nicholas taking a pain. Yeah, not even in addition to other problems Nicholas might have right now. Also, the 2 Mutavaults mean that the deployment of the Merfolk has actually been somewhat sluggish this game.
Yeah, and Hammer, a deck which, if it's firing all cylinders, is great at punishing you for any kind of stumble like that.
Yeah, Urza Saga rolls up to 2. And, well, no equipper rarely available for the Colossus Hammer, but Calder Complete doesn't need any help. I suppose.
Yeah. This is kind of what we highlighted before, right? Of Stoneforge Mystic with Cauldron and then Urza Saga. You don't need to draw an Equipper sometimes. You can just... you have lots of other avenues of victory.
I'm not sure what happened there. That was a mess. But Cauldron Complete is getting dropped now with a mana floating? Not sure what happened. Anyway, attacks coming across here. Nicholas can animate a Mutavault into a Merfolk, which means Svelin will gain Indestructible. But does Indestructible not stand up to, I guess, Indestructible, you still take damage, you just don't die from it, and then Cauldron Complete exiles the creature to take damage. Is that what happened there?
It looks like there was some back and forth about that.
Yeah.
Cauldron is really basically impossible to block that profitably in combat and have your thing live to tell the tale. So, yeah, whenever this creature deals combat damage to a creature, you exile that creature. Has first strike for good measure. The Cauldron grants indestructible, so even if you get past that first gate, your thing is not dealing lethal damage to it anyway. So, lot of words on that card.
Yeah. So likely what happened there was that Nicholas probably assumed that his indestructible Svelin would survive combat there, but it does not. It survives the damage, but then it gets exiled from the trigger or from the static effect, I guess, on the Cauldron Complete. And yeah, why does this creature not have Death Touch? Why is this Cauldron Complete not? I mean, it has everything else. Do they just run out of room for keywords?
I guess there's this weird interaction with Trample and Death Touch, right?
Yeah.
It lets it spill over, which I guess would make it even better, not that it really needs to help there.
No, I mean, you could give it swimming. These Merfolk don't stand a chance against it as it stands, so...
Yeah, we have the entire ocean against just like one germ holding a big ass sword, and the sword is spinning out this time around.
Yeah, well, this germ is big and mighty, and now it's going to pick up some keywords it doesn't already have in lifelink. Here's a Pure Steel Paladin. Yeah, and Connor is just okay. Nicholas doesn't need to see any more for this one. So we're coming back to the booth, and then we're going to jump. Here we are. Dom Harvey, Joe Lissette representing Nerd Rage Gaming. Let's go ahead and look at some deck lists before we continue with the backup match for round 4. Nicholas Sawyer. All right. You mentioned briefly during that game that you were looking ahead to the sideboard and didn't see much.
Yeah, there's Harbinger of the Tide, which is one of these wonky Merfolk, has flash, can bounce a tapped creature. So if they commit to Colossus Hammer on something, you can bounce that back potentially. And then one card which might be an interesting wild card here is Chalice of the Void. If you look at the mana curve of the Hammer deck, this is a blessing for the most part, but also a curse in the context of a Chalice on 1 can shut down a vast swathe of the Hammer deck.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, it's yet another 2-drop in a deck that's already flush with those, and you don't have ways to accelerate it out. There's no like Gemstone Caverns or anything like that. So maybe on the play that can be fast enough. I don't know if on the draw that's going to cut it, and so you might see that switch up a bit for game 3 versus game 2 if we get there.
All right, let's go ahead and look at Connor's list real quick, and then we'll get game 2 going. Looks like, didn't look like he needed a ton of help in game 1. Well, we do have maybe some extraneous cards, like Spell Pierce doesn't seem like it does much against Merfolk, so those are probably able to be cut for removal or whatever Connor sees fit. March of Early White, Blacksmith Skill, that's probably it, right?
There's not a ton here. There's Path to Exile, maybe Needle actually shutting down Ether Vial, Univolt or something. It's pretty marginal, but then none of these options are that appealing.
Yeah. All right, let's go ahead and get game 2 rolling and see if Nicholas can fare a little better here. Unclear yet whether he just took more time shuffling or if he's already on a mulligan. No, it is a mulligan. All right, so Nicholas down a card, but opens on a Vial. That's a good start.
Yeah, Turbo on Vial is the scariest start from a lot of these creature decks. However, it does get strange when they don't have many cards to start with because you're kind of investing a card in the Vial to kind of gain back some time later on. And if you don't have creatures to cheat in the right spots on the curve, then you've wasted another card for not much gain.
Yeah. All right. Esper Sentinel also not at its best in this matchup for the same reason that Spell Pierce isn't. There's just not a lot of non-creature spells in this deck, in that being Merfolk. Spell Pierce did stay in though, and here is Stoneforge number 1. And okay, there's a Hexcatcher, but Nicholas is already up against it, facing down Hammer and Saga.
Yeah, that Saga, potentially a juicy target for Tide Shaper, Spreading Sea, something like that. But Connor has enough going on that he might even be able to survive that loss. So yeah, Tide Shaper going to take down the Urza Saga, kind of kill that one for free. And I think sometimes with the Hammer deck, you just have to accept that risk, right? If Urza Saga is your second land, what are you going to do? Not play it, right? Like it's tough to actually acknowledge that risk in game sometimes.
So whether it came off the top or not, unclear to me, but Connor does have Urza Saga, another Urza Saga, and a fetch land in hand, so is able to delay development of the follow-up Saga if he chooses, and it's going to play Windswept Heath instead. So to get a second Plains on the board and a for sure third land available next turn. Paladin Ornithopter, all right. Just seems tough though for the Merfolk. And you talked about the glut of 2-drops even on turn 3 here. I guess there's 2 1-mana spells. It's Dismember plus I was thinking plus Ether Vial, but it's actually be Dismember plus pay the tax on Esper Sentinel to keep rid of Pure Steel. So that's good. But this is just Nicholas surviving. This isn't Nicholas actually like making real inroads on Connor's life total.
Yeah, it's treading water, but we're not actually swimming anywhere, right? There's another saga. Okay, drum. Or no, gingerbread, excuse me.
Gingerbread, yeah. Okay, well, this isn't too scary. Maybe Nicholas is looking a little better this game.
Yeah, I wonder if Connor is biding his time on some kind of instant speed Stoneforge Mystic activation here.
All right, here's a...
Okay, so...
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Blacksmith Skill can give hexproof and indestructible to any permanent, so protecting the Urza Saga from the Tide Shaper that was hoping to repeat the same sequence we saw just a turn ago.
Yeah, that is quite slick. So, yeah, Nicholas's hopes dashed there, and now this, until there's an island in play for Connor, Nicholas is going to have trouble attacking through a string of constructs, which are already, I mean, the first one's going to be a 4/4 that's already going to be bigger than what Merfolk can easily deal with.
So here we go again.
All right, so construct made, and Urza Saga. This is kind of amusing the way this is playing out. But yeah, so now we have no island walk. We have no island, and a 4/4 is enough to hold off this army of Tide Shapers.
Yeah, you just have to pass the turn. So I wonder if now is a spot for Cauldra, which can potentially take over combat here by itself.
Right. It seems like, yeah, that's the obvious way to go for Connor. And then, well, no, it's going to be Shadow Spear. Okay. Well, okay. A more significant board presence now for Nicholas Saliero as a second Lord comes into play. Still not enough to deal with a Shadow Spear on a construct. Another Dismember is drawn. All right. Well, I think we need to settle in for a more interactive game than we had in the first one here. I'm not feeling that Connor is necessarily ahead anymore.
Yeah, Dismember is one of the few removal spells that does actually deal with a germ token equipped with Cauldra. So we're using it here instead, just taking out this, taking out the construct and setting up a really big attack for this turn.
Yeah, I mean that's clears away a bulk of the board at the cost of one Tide Shaper. I mean that's something that Nicholas can live without. He had a full house on the board. Now it's just 2 pair of Merfolk, but that might be enough.
And there is, I think, Harbinger of the Tides in Nicholas's hand, which, if the Cauldra token tries to attack, could eat that up. I think we might have to just rely on a defensive Cauldra here, though. Don't know if we can afford to attack into this board.
Okay, you're saying Cauldra, but I don't know that we have Cauldra this game. We picked up the Shadow Spear on that last Stoneforge.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's not bad. And yeah, wow.
Okay, I think that might be the 4th Tide Shaper, but it's just another random 3/3 with no other abilities, and that's enough to tie up the match. So Nicholas Salier will see a third game in Connor Mullally. Connor looking to cement the lead for the NRG Player of the Year race. It's not over yet.
Yeah,
all right.
And to some extent, he can rest on his laurels. He's got that invite for the championship locked up. But these people are competitive. They don't just want to be one of the pack. They want to be number one. They want to have. They want to be acknowledged as I'm VIP, I'm MVP, I'm Player of the Year, and that's a title which Connor currently is within his grasp. If nothing changes, he will be your Player of the Year.
Yeah.
The question is, he has Zach Allen, Jesse Robkin, and a few others hot on his heels, and if one of them has an especially good weekend and he falls flat, then he could get pipped to that post. So still a lot for him to play for, even if the main prize is already lined up.
All right, let's go. Game 3. Connor Lawley and Nicholas Sally are playing for a 3-1 spot, and even setting all the other stuff aside, they're still Magic players playing in a competitive event for prizes, and they're going to want to do as well as they can.
Absolutely.
Leading off on Saga again, or no, sorry, not leading
off on Saga.
Leading off Saga this time. It was not the same way as the previous games. Getting underneath the first activations of the Tide Shapers. On the other hand,
and it seems like this time we're not even trying to slow play it to get any kind of constructs out of it. We're saying, all right, maybe this is not long for this world, but if it pops off, I can get the Colossal Hammer to pair with my Stoneforge Mystic, or I can at least get some value out of it, and not give Nicholas as big a window to gobble it up.
Oh, in fact, we do have construct there.
Yeah, thanks to Ornithopter and Spring Leaf Charm, we do kind of get to just have it all.
Mm-hmm.
And so now the question is, do we just make another construct, or do we have even higher hopes for this turn? We see Shardless Agent in hand, which sadly was not able to deploy that before Hammer off Saga, but we might be able to live with this outcome instead.
Yeah, with 2 constructs, quick as can be, into play here for Connor, and that's already a lot for Nicholas to deal with.
Yeah, and those are going to be 5/5s at minimum with something coming off the Saga here. So that by itself, I mean, that is already a game-winning attack force potentially, and it's only getting better from there.
All right, so Harbinger of the Tides. That's where we're bouncing a tapped creature. Is that double blue or blue in the colors? Double blue, I think.
Yeah, that one is double blue, and so is Merfolk Trickster, which is another nice way to clean up a construct. So neither of those natural lines of defense are open to Nicholas here.
So instead, he's just going to get belted. Yeah, this is a rough start to this game. Hexcatcher, okay. Your small creatures are now slightly less small, but Connors are getting bigger by the second.
Yeah, we saw Mason Clark's copy of Hammer kind of misfiring in that last round. I think you're seeing more here of why Hammer's been one of the best decks in Modern since its rise to the top.
Yeah, definitely. This is turn 1 Saga making 2 constructs. That's the dream start. And the Merfolk deck, while developing here, I mean, he's used all of its mana each turn, and he's just miles behind.
Yeah, I mean, that's the trade-off with Saga normally is, do you play it right away and try and get something off that 3rd chapter as soon as possible, or do you have to wait a turn and then, starting turn 3, you get to start making constructs? If you get to just have it all, do both at once, well, that is phenomenal.
All right, a fresh Saga here for Connor. Nicholas hasn't managed to deal with the first Saga proceeds yet. All right, Hammer into play, unequipped as of yet. Sigurd is 8 in hand, so Connor clearly has a plan in mind. And it involves Pure Steel Paladin. Nicely animating Nexus first.
Yeah.
To play around potential Dismember. I believe that's what happened. Now Paladin's in. Hammer is equipped. That's a lethal. Yeah.
This
very nice.
Tapping. Okay.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Tap the Nexus.
And that's a really nice sequence with the Paladin. If you have a Hammer already in play, you play the Paladin, you try and equip the Hammer to some other threat. They effectively have to remove that, and then when they do, well, you can just re-equip to something else, still leverage the Paladin's ability sticking around. So often the Paladin can demand several removal spells by itself.
All right, so after the Dockhand taps down the Nexus, Nicholas still gets bashed by 2 very large constructs. It does have to chump block one of them. And once you start chump blocking, it's often hard to recover, especially when the best you can really do is just deploy more chump blockers. Even with Dismember in hand, Nicholas doesn't even have a good target. The Colossal Hammer is already equipped. So that Ornithopter would need to be dealt with first, or alongside the Dismember taking out the Pure Steel Paladin, and it's just not in the cards, I think, for Nicholas Salyer.
We do have over 700 people currently watching these merfolk getting chewed up and spat out in the sea here. So we thank all of you for joining us. I hope you stick around for the rest of today with our Modern 15K and then our Pioneer tomorrow as well. And then tune in next year for the 2022 championship, the conclusion of all of these players' hard work so far. And then we have a full 2023 schedule as well that we are showing off this weekend as well.
Yeah, and Conor Mullally has his sights on being not only in the championship, but being the leading point getter this year. Just needs to hold his position this weekend. Doesn't need to pass anybody. And the players right behind him have both equaled his one loss so far today. So if he can continue piling up wins, the way is clear for him. And
just working through some technical issues here, but not much to comment upon as we're watching Connor just develop his board even further. And I don't know what rabbit Nicholas could pull out of the hat here. I think these fish are getting fried. So, yeah. So we're going to come back to break. Joe is working through some technical faults. While we do that, we're going to go to a short break. We will be back with magic of some kind, whether round 5 or, round 4, more of this round or something, before too long. But bear with us, and we will be back with you very shortly.